importantly, I'd like to address another key point, another key highlight of the declaration. All the member states of the SCO have now expressed deep concern over the escalating Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They have strongly condemned the actions that are causing civilian casualties as well as a dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The summit has called for an immediate, complete and sustainable ceasefire, unhindered humanitarian access, as well as renewed efforts to achieve peace, stability, as well as security for all residents. Member states have emphasized that a just and comprehensive settlement on the Palestinian question is essential for lasting peace in the Middle East. So what do you make at the outset? What is your very first reaction to this particular point within the declaration?
Well, I'd like to speak more broadly rather than just focus on the Gaza conflict. Xi Jinping talked about double standards and bullies, and it seems to me, and it should seem to the rest of the world, that Xi Jinping is actually the bully. Xi Jinping is the bully when it comes to relations with India, and I refer to the clash or the conflict in which at least 20 Indian soldiers were killed in the northern area of, again, I haven't memorized this, but it is Arunachal Pradesh, I believe. And China still calls this area of India South Tibet. I would also talk about the hypocrisy in China when it comes to the treatment of their own Muslim populations, the Uyghurs, in which 500,000 people remain in detention today, and millions more have been detained previously. And of course, their aggression, their naked aggression against Taiwan, their threats of forceful, takeover of Taiwan. And of course, I could go on and talk about the Chinese aggression in the South China Sea, which is right where I live, not a few hundred kilometers from where I'm sitting right now, in which just 2 weeks ago, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel was bearing down on a Philippine Coast Guard vessel inside Philippine waters, and a Chinese vessel trying to trap the Philippine vessel pulled in front, and there was a collision between these two Chinese ships.
Indeed.
The Chinese have systematically deprived the Filipino fishermen of their territorial waters, have been defiling the environment in this area, in the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. And China just simply is too arrogant and too aggressive and too much of a bully to sit down and negotiate. So I guess I'm rather skeptical when it comes to Gaza. I think we can all point fingers, and I would be the first one to say that the war has got to stop, and the people in Gaza have got to be given the food and the medical attention that they need. But for Russia, for Vladimir Putin to be pointing fingers, and for Xi Jinping to be pointing fingers at other countries is absurd. This conclusion that Xi Jinping foisted upon the Security Summit was that, what was it? The war in Ukraine was started by Ukraine. Is that right? Did I get that right? And it was all about the fact that they were trying to join NATO. And what kind of nonsense is this? It was completely illegal. In February of 2022, Russia aggressively and illegally invaded a sovereign democratic state. That's a fact. And Xi Jinping and his nonsense can't fool the rest of us.
Indeed, I'd also like to focus on the Middle East. We've spoken about Gaza, but that's not the only thing that the SCO member states have in fact highlighted. They've also condemned the military strikes on Israel, by Israel, I beg your pardon, and the United States of America against Iran that had taken place in June this year. They've stated that such aggressive actions against civilian targets include nuclear energy infrastructure, which has resulted in the deaths of civilians. They've called this a gross violation of international law as well as the UN Charter and an infringement of the sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran. They've stated that the physical nuclear safety and security of nuclear facilities must be ensured. on a permanent basis. This comes even as the E3 powers are now hanging an ultimatum on Iran's head. They've threatened snapback sanctions against Iran as well. So what do you make of this statement, this so-called united front that the SCO has put up in wake of these sanctions?
It's the height of hypocrisy for Xi Jinping and Putin to be condemning the nuclear attack, and I agree it was a breach of international law. But for those two to be condemning the United States is hypocrisy, because wasn't it in Russia that attacked the Zaporizhia nuclear facility in Ukraine, and putting this nuclear facility at risk constantly to this day, and a far greater risk to civilian population. So, I mean, it's well and good for them to point fingers at others, but they should look to themselves. Again, for a country like China that's engaged in genocide of the Uyghurs and the Tibetans, by the way, for the last 60 years, it has no place. I totally and categorically reject these statements.
I request you to stay on with us because we're tracking further updates since we're speaking about